I'm Douglas Maddie and welcome to Altered Perceptions. In this video we're going to be reacting to PENN JILLETTE from Penn & Teller answers magic questions from Twitter. Tech support wired. Let's get into it.
Hi, this is PENN JILLETTE of Penn & Teller. I'll be answering your questions from Twitter. This is magic support. If magicians are not supposed to reveal their secrets, how do you get new magicians? It's a stupid rule. We could not agree more. We've been thrown out of the Magic Circle and the Magic Castle for giving away magic secrets. Giving away magic secrets, or rather not giving away magic secrets, is not a moral rule, it's a compositional rule. When you're starting out and you're doing a trick for somebody, and afterwards they say, how did you do that? If you tell them, the whole illusion crumbles. It's not a good idea to tell them when you're a beginner. When you become more professional, sometimes giving away a little bit of a secret helps you sell another secret later down the line. And certainly when you're teaching people, like in our master class or our books, you give away secrets. That's the way people learn. It's a stupid rule because it doesn't exist.
I think also as well, do people really want to know? Because a lot of people don't really want to know how a trick works. They enjoy the experience of, knowing that it's a magic trick. And when people do say, how do you do that? It's more of a kind of reactionary response. They don't really want to know because the look of disappointment and the kind of, kind of comes over their face once they realise how simple it is. So I think a lot of the time people don't really want to know how a magic trick works, and those that do sometimes want to know just out of curiosity. But there's no real point in learning a magic trick unless you're going to duplicate or replicate it. So yeah, I agree, it is a stupid rule, because if you say that magicians can't reveal secrets, then there's no way you could possibly pass on knowledge. So yeah. And nowadays with the internet, you can just go on Google and a lot of it comes up on YouTube and stuff like that. So it's not a case of finding out how secrets are done. It's a case of, do you really want to know? Because it's just going to spoil the magic for you. And, it doesn't, there's no upside to it really. Unless you're going to reenact it and fool somebody else.
Let's see what's next. Chris Hastings. How often do Penn & Teller mess up a stage illusion and have to resort to forbidden shadow sorcery to make sure no one notices? The stuff we're doing often pretends to be dangerous. It's often dealing with subjects that are dangerous, and therefore it'd be immoral to have something be really dangerous. You should not go to an entertainment expecting someone to get hurt. So because we work with stuff that is apparently dangerous, we have to be very, very careful. So very rarely do things screw up at that kind of monumental level. And when they do, we do not resort to the dark powers. We take our lumps, we take responsibility. We just say, we screwed up.
Yeah, and if you ever do a trick and it goes wrong, depending on how it goes wrong, you can still get away with a lot of stuff if tricks go wrong, especially if you haven't specified in advance what it is that you're going to do, because people don't expect it. So I've done tricks and they've gone wrong, and they've still kind of worked out right. It's just that another effect came out of it, and so I just got away with it. But if it falls flat and you've been caught out and there is no other way, just put your hands up and just say, it's a trick and it went wrong. I think that, and the first question about how tricks are done, if you put your value on how a trick is done, and that's happening in both those two questions, then as soon as people find out how the trick is done, or the trick becomes fallible because it goes wrong, then your value decreases. Whereas if you can make your value as a performer greater than the secret of the trick, then it doesn't matter. And that's what you should do. You should make your personality, you should make your performance far greater than the trick itself, and also do a succession of tricks with different methods that have the same effect. So that way it's much more difficult to be caught out, and if you are caught out, you can just move on to the next effect and just kind of brush over it.
We were doing a seance at Steven Spielberg's bachelor party.
We were doing a seance at Steven Spielberg's bachelor party. How many people can say that?
And there was this one moment when I had to do a force, which means the spectator thinks they have a free choice, but actually you're forcing a choice upon them. If I wanted you to pick the three of spades, for instance, I could say, just tell me when to stop. You tell me when to stop, and I would say, right about there, okay, you pick the three of spades. Now that's a sleight of hand way to do a force. Now I had a sleight of hand way to do a force of all these pictures we had. And Spielberg decided to just grab a picture and say, this is the one I want. Now that is a major screw up. If I say I'm going to have you pick a card and you just go, give me this one, well, I haven't had time to force it. I'm completely screwed up. But Steven Spielberg happened to pick the picture I was going to force. So I got really, really lucky. And it turned out that that trick was impossible to explain just because he screwed it up. What do we got next? He says a series.
Yeah, I've had that loads of times whereby there's just a happy coincidence that occurs and then you take the credit for it as a magician. It's really good, even if you're not actively performing a trick, or if something happens, they kind of say, oh, you're the magician, you must have done it. Or people, you're doing one trick and another trick just accidentally happens, or people think that they saw something or experienced something when they didn't. So always build and build on the effect, and it really helps secure the fact that, oh my god, it really happened because there was no possible way he could have done it. And the magician himself sometimes thinks, God knows how that happened, but I'll take the credit for it.
What's next? Kevin Soka, how do magicians eat glass without injuring themselves? That's not a magic trick, it's a geek trick. There are a few things that make it easier in terms of diet and preparation, which I'm not going to tell you, because I'm afraid if I explain a little bit about eating glass, someone might try it, and it's a very, very dangerous trick even done properly, so don't try it.
A mate of mine called the world's most dangerous Ryan did a glass eating act, and he did it whereby he sat down at a table with a knife and fork and he got the glass and he crunched it up and was just eating it, and I couldn't watch it. It was really difficult to watch. It's not a magic trick. He was actually eating the glass, and it's dangerous, and it's the same with the sword swallowing and all the other kind of stuff, is that it's a very street performer kind of circus thing to do, and there's no magic there because you are really eating the glass.
Anthony says, a serious moral question for magicians. When a sick kid asks you, is magic real, do you tell them the truth or lie? That is a serious moral question, it's a serious moral answer. There's no such thing as magic. There's no such thing as a supernatural. And I don't care if it's a sick child or a healthy adult, you do not lie. I never, ever want to leave someone believing that magic is real. That would be morally wrong.
Yep, I agree with that. And it's like I've said several times before, is that you do lie and it is a deception, but because you're saying that you're lying and it is a deception, it's an honest deception. So, yeah. If someone asks you if there's magic, it's not really any magic, it's just all tricks.
Darren Gendron is going to Batu. Question for magicians, when working with a card deck, how many copies of the deck do you like having to work with? I guess it's how many copies of a trick deck would you like having to work with? It's the same question with anything. How many new guitar strings do you want to have around when you're playing guitar seriously? Depends on how quickly they wear out, how roughly you play, and what gauge string you're using. Same thing with a deck of cards, depends on what you're doing. If you're doing simple stuff, it's not going to make any difference. If you're doing heavy duty, Pharaoh shuffles and this kind of stuff, you're going to want a very, very new deck, so they all go together very nicely.
I actually prefer, if I've got a deck of cards, actually slightly worn in. He's using a new deck there, you can tell by how crisp it is and stuff. But I like a deck that's fairly worn in and that I've just been playing around with. You kind of get a feel for the deck after a while, and then it gets to a point whereby it's been used too much. So I don't like a new deck, and I don't like a deck that's too much used. I like one that's kind of halfway at my touch, as opposed to somebody else been messing around with it. There's something about it, I don't quite know what it is. You develop a kind of a feel for that particular deck. It's very unique.
Question for magicians, will technology eventually render levitation effects trivial? No. You're not going to get levitation out of technology for a really, really long time. That's my prediction. Also, when you do get levitation, you get a very different kind of levitation. It used to be the magicians were on the forefront of technology. Because communication is so good now and everybody knows technology so well, you can no longer sell magic with technology. So even if technology is able to do limited levitations, the lying version, the magic version, I believe will still be interesting, at least for a while, at least for my lifetime, but I'm wicked old.
Yeah, I don't necessarily believe that that's true. Like, yesterday's magic trick is today's technology. So, yeah, I don't think that's true. I think virtual reality is a really big thing. You got nanobots and all sorts of things, like especially in the virtual reality world where you could do levitation effects and it feels like you're flying. Even if you go to the cinema, there's not just basic cinema now. There's like 4D cinema and all sorts of stuff. So, yeah, there's loads of artificial worlds that are being created and stuff like that. So I don't think that's necessarily true. I think that the feeling and the believability of somebody levitating and flying in a virtual reality simulator or something of that nature is not too far away.
Stephen Blair, there's a name I can pronounce. Stephen Blair, this tweet will only make sense to a few people. Question for magicians, do you file the sides of your deck before using it? This is for real advanced cardistry stuff. For someone like Richard Turner, who is a card wizard, not only does it matter exactly how the sides are sanded or filed, but he also needs to have them printed just right. Now, Richard Turner is blind and does everything by touch, and is exact what we call the work in the deck, slight little bends on the corners that he can feel. The work he does with those are so subtle that his cards have to be absolutely perfect. So after he gets a deck of cards, he does a lot of rubbing on a surface, all the surface, to get all the little burrs off the edges, to be able to do everything right and do all the fanning. And I've never done anything that complicated. I do a palm, I do a pass, I do a few other moves, but I'm not good. So my decks of cards can be pretty much right out of the box. But yeah, when you get into heavy-duty magic with cards or cardistry, you have to have them just perfect. Of course, if you're doing card cheating, you got to work with whatever you got.
Yeah, so the only time I've prepped cards is when I've done card manipulations, so like palming and back palming and all that kind of stuff. So when I've done stuff on stage and I've produced cards and fan cards, and because I've had to have them really bendy. So one of the ways I do it is I get a card and I get a ruler and I just scrape it across the ruler in every single direction, and then the card becomes very floppy and very malleable, and so then you can manipulate it between your fingers better, because when you're using a brand new card, it becomes more like paper after you've done it a few times, but it's still hard enough to be usable. So there are ways in which you can prep cards in advance so that you can manipulate them better on stage, and I've done that a couple of times, but I don't do it anymore because I can't be asked.
How does a magician know if their invisible ink pen is out of ink when they are writing? All I will say there, you misspelled there. Oh, Jesus Christ. Rybray. Where do magicians get those little smoke bombs they throw down to disappear? I'm going to need a couple of those today. It does bring up an interesting point in the old Batman television show, not the Batman that's all conflicted, but the Adam West Batman of the 60s. They would have villains that would throw down something, poof, and they run away. That's just a movie magic trick. That's not done in the real world. Sometimes smoke is used to obscure stuff, but pretty much it's one of those things that if you can think of it, it won't fool you.
Yeah, so I think the more common one is flash paper, when you set the paper alight and it just goes up in a flash. And that, again, it's used for theatricality and distraction. It's not really going to fool anyone on a major level. And again, like Penn's saying as well, smoke, it's usually used to add an effect. It's not used to actually deceive people a lot of the time. So when they say it's all done with smoke and mirrors, it's not necessarily done with smoke.
Penny Lane. How does a magician pull a rabbit out of a hat? Who puts it in there? Is it hungry? How does it fit in there? Does it have a girlfriend? I can't sleep until I learn this. Okay, let's take them. Magicians pull a rabbit out of a hat, usually by not pulling out of the hat, usually loaded in right before. It's usually in a bag. It's usually hung inside you. It fits in there, usually a body load for, not all the time, usually a body load, and then you would show the hat empty. You'd cop it here, load it in, black bag, open it up, pull it out. The rabbit's in the black bag for maybe 90 seconds, and the rabbit is transferred in maybe 2 seconds. When we used to do that trick, our rabbit would happily run into the bag. It liked that little closed space. Yes, they would have a girlfriend or a boyfriend or any sort of friend they wanted. We would have a little area for the rabbits where they were very comfortable and happy. And Penny Lane, I hope you sleep now.
Yeah, so one of the reasons why magicians use rabbits, but not only rabbits, doves and other like fish as well, is because they're used to confined spaces. So, you know, rabbits go into little rabbit holes and stuff like that, and doves fit in quite nicely, and they're quite comfortable and snug, like he just said, going into those small confined spaces, and they don't make any noise when they're in there, like a dog would, or a cat who'd just walk off. Like, so again, the reason why magicians produce rabbits and certain types of animals is because they are very comfortable in snug, tight, small spaces, which is great when you need to transfer them, but also when you're actually performing the trick and you need to show a hat empty or a box empty and then it has a rabbit inside. And also another reason I've remembered why people like rabbits is because when you produce a rabbit, people go, oh, it's just one of those things. So whereas if you produce like a ferret or something, no, people are like, oh. So it is sort of like there's an emotional reaction that it gets out the audience as well as the practical aspect of using that particular creature.
TRMJ, which is the real Mrs. Jeffy. She came across Fool Us with PENN JILLETTE and Mr. Teller. I'm trying to figure out, how do you even begin to fool them in magic? Well, you know, there are really good magicians. And although Teller and I have over 100 years of magic experience between us, there are people who are really, really clever and really, really smart and really, really well rehearsed, and they fool the living shit out of us.
Yeah, the two ways of fooling Penn and Teller are to do a trick that they don't know how it's done, which is a very simple thing to do, and another way is showing them a trick that they believe that they know how it's done when really you're not really doing it that way, so you're leading them down a false path. So there's a couple of ways to fool Penn and Teller.
Amanda asks, I need someone to tell me how magicians do the trick where they put phones inside glass bottles. Help me, it's keeping me awake at night. A lot of problems with insomnia on Twitter, as we see with our president. Phone inside the glass bottle, I believe, is a trick that's still being used professionally. I did not develop it. I did not invent it. I believe it's still for sale. I don't think it's within my rights to tell you how that's done, but it's a wicked good trick.
Yeah, and again, although it may be keeping you up at night, do you really want to know? Because it's sort of like I say, that when you find out the secret to a trick, it's often very disappointing.
Oh, and you're not going to sleep. How does a magician swallow bunches of razor blades without hurting? Felt very, very repulsive. It's a form of sleight of hand. Don't think you can swallow razor blades and be okay. You can't, you will die, don't do it.
I agree with that. And another one as well is that you can fold down the razor blades to put them in your mouth, so that so the performers that do this, that you shouldn't do, it doesn't cut their tongue as much and stuff like that.
How does a magician entertain a magician? With magic. Yeah, magicians love to see magic. You don't, it's how does a guitar player entertain another guitar player? By guitar playing. Musicians like music just as much as non-musicians. Magicians like magic more than non-magicians. Our whole show, Fool Us, is all about magicians doing magic for us and trying to fool us, and we love it.
Yeah, there's a thing of, like, once you're bitten by the bug of magic, it becomes a bit of an addiction. Because when you go to magic dealerships and days where people are selling magic tricks on stall stands and stuff, when you see all these props and cups and balls and this latest gadget and all that kind of stuff, it's literally like going to a toy store, and you just feel like a kid at a toy store, and it's sort of like, oh, what does this do? And someone demonstrates a trick for you, and I used to love going to magic conventions, but even when there were times when I was all magicked out and I never wanted to do another magic trick again. Put me in a magic convention, I'm like a kid in a toy shop. I just loved it. It was fantastic. You just want to go and buy everything and get everything and just start practicing and playing around. It's really quite exciting. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and you'll be notified of our latest videos.